All right, Father Mark. It's 2:30. I'm timing us today. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Catechumens Depart. I'm Eric Anderson.
Father Mark Kozak from Assumption of the Holy Virgin Mary Church in South Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Yes, but
where it is cold and we had 2 inches of snow and ice and everything else. We had a winter storm yesterday.
Yeah. I know one of our mutual friends and parishioner mates and whatever, Jerome, texted me this morning. He said he got up at 4 and was shoveling and unearthing his car and all that fun.
I think they got more up in Philly.
Yeah.
We got less down here in Delaware.
Yeah, so. I think they got dumped on pretty good. You can see I'm not on the back porch this week. It's not 72 degrees.
No. Hey.
I'm out in what used to be an old milk barn, but my brother converted into a little apartment about 20 years ago.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Very nice.
My family's super handy. It's pretty cool. So last week we wrapped up our first part of Escape from Machine World, and we were talking at the end about, well, specifically we were talking about like the shape of church buildings and the iconography of the church, the incarnate nature of things, which we tend to go back to a bunch, but we were kind of bridging into the topic of symbolism. So I wanted to go back to that this week. This morning, thinking about my cheeky title for our little mini series, like, how did we end up in machine world? Like, what does that look like right now? And, it seems to me that you do get the modernist totalizing narratives, which reduces everything to material. And then you get the postmodernists who try to escape that, but they're still using a lot of that same implicit thinking. And they manage to sort of divorce themselves from the strictly material world to some degree, but they sort of end up being ghosts, like creatures of will, or I guess, it's this post-truth world we live in. You hear about, it's my truth. It's that sort of thing, right? So to me, that has the effect of creating an almost, well, it's that Manichaean divide, right? The dualistic world. You end up with, you still are in machine world, but then you're just a ghost kind of in the machine world. Mm-hmm. And I think this has an icon in the transgender movement, or whatever you want to call that, right? It's almost like that finds a home in the very body of the person, where it's like, my will, my idea, my whatever doesn't even fit with the material body that I'm in. So leaving all of the theological stuff aside, it's a pretty strong icon, a condensed symbol in some way of where this thinking maybe leads. And over and against that, we were talking about, the shape of our very church buildings and everything being arcs, boats. They're reflective of all of the different symbols of the church. And so symbolism in Orthodoxy works on a lot of levels and kind of all the time.
Yes.
And it seems to me to be an antidote. But you had also said that it can be kind of a pitfall.
Yes, it can be a pitfall. People can fall in love and worship symbolism. Mm-hmm. They can worship icons, which is what some people did during the iconoclastic controversy. Mm-hmm. They literally would peel the paint off the icons, put it in the chalice, and put wine in it and drink it.
The art conservationist in me is really upset about that.
Yeah. Then you had the other end of the spectrum that picked all of the tesserae off the walls and took down all the icons and the crosses and everything else, because the Bible said that there were supposed to be no images.
Right.
So both were wrong.
Yeah.
Severely wrong.
Right.
And in fact, both were saying basically the same thing.
How so?
So they were worshiping symbol. They were worshiping a symbol. So the icon, it didn't no longer, to them, the icon was no longer an icon.
Mm-hmm.
The people that scraped the icon, it was something that was to be worshipped, not venerated. For the other people that picked the tesserae off the wall, it was no longer an icon because they worshipped a couple of verses in the Bible, and they were afraid of the Muslims and everything else that was going on, and they overdefined something that was incredibly simple, that the Seventh Council finally put its stamp on, that because God became incarnate,
Mm-hmm.
then we can have icons of Jesus Christ.
So, hey, that's a nice icon. Is that hand painted?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
it's
beautiful.
from Georgia.
Oh, wonderful. That's the image not made by hands, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Mm-hmm. So we can have icons of which this is one.
Now,
Then
go ahead.
Then we can take it in another place where we have an icon that I put on this board 40 years ago.
Yeah.
The monk is Saint Anthony the Roman, who was an early abbot of a monastery in Novgorod 1,000 years ago.
Okay.
So some people would say, because they're a little bit skewed, that because it's a paper icon, paper mache on a board, it's not an icon. Well,
right.
Yeah, it is. It is an icon. Sorry, too bad, so sad. But what's more important is that little cross there, made out of silver, has a piece of his great schema in it.
Oh, cool.
So that little piece of his great schema is 1,000 years old, pointing us back to the saint, a monastic, pointing to God.
If people don't know what's a great schema.
A great schema is a vestment worn by the highest rank of monks and nuns. It's almost like a priest's stole, but it's worn underneath. They rarely wear it outside. So there are 3 ranks of monks, and the great schema is the top rank.
Okay.
So that's what the great schema is. So this icon, which some people may say it's a piece of paper, well, it was, but it's been venerated for 40 years with the cross and this schema as this connection to God
now,
through Saint Anthony.
So I'm kind of thinking about what you're saying, and I feel like a couple of things, right? Like the folks that were scraping off bits of the icons and things. That almost to me is that's like a proto materialist way of looking at it, right? It actually it's reducing, it's actually taking away its symbolism and reducing it.
It's taking away what an icon is.
Because the symbolism of icons, and all of the things that we deal with in the church, and probably all of life by extension, maybe, I don't know, we can maybe get into that or not. Like the symbolism of icons it's like medieval realism. It's like Platonic realism in some way. It's that this is a thing that points to the real thing.
Right. That's the basic. This is why I don't like the use of the word by Apple and everybody else, because I'm sorry, the little thing symbol on the Apple computer does not point me towards God.
No, it's a logo.
You know,
it's a different deal.
So
yeah,
it's a different deal. So but an icon points you towards God. And it infuses all of these other things too. It may tell a story. Most icons do tell a story. The story that was on this one was him in his monastery and giving to the Virgin Mary and the Christ child his monastery.
Oh, I see it. It's like a little bitty model building.
Right.
Okay.
So that's what the story is there. So there are many layers and that icons have, pointing to the ultimate icon, who is Jesus Christ, and also pointing to us, who are icons. The reason why each of us are sensed in the church is not because of some kind of magical deal that we picked up from the pagans, because the pagans used incense too. And they used it to mark an area that was going to be used for worship.
Right.
So they would go around in a circle, they would go around in a square or whatever. But the reason why we're sensed, each one of us is sensed. So when the deacon or the priest goes out and goes around the church, they're sensing around the church, the sacred space, but they're also at the beginning or end of that, they sense all the people. And that's because we are icons.
And what does the incense then symbolize?
It symbolizes the blessing. It symbolizes the the incense that goes up to symbolizes the Holy Spirit that goes up to God. There's incense has all kinds of. It's something that's precious. It is. It has material worth, because incense is not. You don't pick it up at the the dime store, and
it's not cheap.
No, it's not cheap.
They don't have it at Dollar General. No,
they do not have it at Dollar General. Yeah, but so that's part of what icons are for. That's also part of what churches are for. When you talk about the symbolism of the church, and you look at the greatest example of this in the East, of course, is Hagia Sophia, where it has two narthexes. It has an exonarthex, an outer narthex, and an inner narthex. And they are for the people that are catechumens. They're for the people who are under penance. They are for the people who might be interested in the church. That's where they stay. That's where their place is.
Right, where when literally in the liturgy, when they say catechumens depart, that's where you're supposed to go. Yeah. Like in the old ways.
Right.
As I understand it.
And there are 3 doors in the regular narthex. The 2 on the side are for everyone in there except for one person. So you go into church that way. Those 2 doors. The doors in the middle are for the emperor.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So when the deacon says, "Oh Lord, save those who fear God," that's when the emperor walks in. Walks in, those doors are open, then they're closed, then he comes up and venerates the altar. And there's a symbolism in that, because he is an icon himself of, like us, made in the image, the icon of God. But also his position puts him into being, his power is a shadow, and it's a very dim shadow of what God's power.
Yeah. And it's almost like if you look at it, I wonder if you flip it around, right? It's like that can remind us that all of those things emanate from God, right? If you
Yes.
turn that, it's pointing toward God. Well, if you turn that around, well, everything's emanating out. Like even in some ways, right? The icon of a saint or whatever is like kind of emanating out from that original point.
Now, we all understand in our culture, not all understand, we all work with some of this. The easiest thing is to use symbols. Okay. Why isn't it up there?
Hold it up to your camera. There you go.
There it is. Yep. Okay, this is the $1 bill with George Washington on it.
Yeah.
The intrinsic worth of this is El Zippo. It's a piece of paper.
Right.
But behind it is the Federal Reserve, which is what it says on here. The Federal Reserve, it's a Federal Reserve note. And until the 1930s, it was either a gold note or a silver note.
Right.
Backed by gold or backed by silver. I have some of those in my coin collection. So that's something that we use all the time. When we take out a nickel, there's hardly any nickel in a nickel.
Yeah.
When we take out a dime after that was minted after 1964, its intrinsic metal worth is nothing. But before that, it's worth about $2 because it's made out of silver, about 99% silver.
Yeah.
So we understand that, and this can bring us to an understanding of icons. My favorite story, which is I think I told you because I had spent a week at Fuller Institute myself many years ago to go to a church planting class and make a report to the Metropolitan Council of the OCA about it. This was back in 1983. So I'm out with all of the Protestants. It was me and 300 Protestants, and I'm trying to explain icons to them, and I say, take out your wallet. So one of them took out his wallet, and I took out my wallet, and I said, take out a picture of your wife, because I knew he had a picture of his wife there. So I did this. Oops.
Move over. Are you trying to hold it up we can't see it.
Why can't we see it?
Go to your left. Move it to your left. More.
There it is.
Go.
Okay.
Oh.
Right. So I took this out and I said, what did you just do? Well, it reminds me of her. I went, exactly. This is what icons do. Very simple. Very direct. They're not to be worshipped. Well, you worship them. They're idols. No, they're not idols. Even when they're venerated with a kiss, they aren't idols.
Right.
They aren't idols then. When we walk into the church and cross ourselves, and in some of the older churches we'll go to, we can go to, or if we go to an Orthodox country, people spend a half an hour crossing themselves and venerating icons before they're ready to.
I've been to a Rokor monastery for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. So why are we doing all that? Well, we're venerating an icon which points us towards God.
Mm-hmm.
We're also honoring their Christ-like story. So that's that little piece of the great schema
Mm-hmm.
is like that too.
It's
It's like
interesting
that.
though that you pulled out $1, right? And I'm thinking of, because my friend Matthew and I were talking about that actually a couple days ago. Um, the increasing levels of abstraction, because so in the environment that you're describing, right? Like say an old world Orthodox church, everything's connected, right?
Yeah.
Like everything, all of reality is interleaved. It's just this points to that, to this, to that, to up, and eventually it all points up to God, right?
Mhm.
And as we have gotten further into this machine-like reality, people's souls are still hungry, but things so it's weird. Like we had money that it was like, this is materialist money. This dollar bill is worth 1/8 ounce of gold or whatever,
Yeah. Mhm.
Then we abstracted it a little bit, and then so now it's points towards the Federal Reserve, which is a little bit more interconnected but more
Mhm.
abstract. And now we're moving away from cash altogether to where everything
Right.
will be digital, everything will be on cards, everything will be tracked, traced, connected, but completely abstracted. So
That's right.
it does in some ways again like pull us back into that split level world.
It pulls it back into the dualistic world. So when
Yeah.
you have something happen a few years ago,
Mm-hmm.
we had something happen in our culture that everybody took sides with and everything.
Mm-hmm.
We had someone that took a knee during the national anthem.
Mm-hmm.
So what does this represent?
Hey, Kim has one of those. It represents the idea, or it represents the United States of America.
Yep, the whole United States,
Right.
because it represents the 50 states and, okay, the territories, even though they're not on there, but still represents them too.
Sorry, Puerto
So the
Rico.
50 states is a history lesson because there are 13 stripes.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole story about flags that are done in military retirements. I'm not going to go through all that. But for me, that particular flag was my mother's flag because my mother was a naval officer, and when she was buried, that flag was over her.
Mm.
So it represents my mother in her service.
Mm-hmm.
But more importantly, and this is why I will never take a knee, that flag represents me
Mm-hmm.
and you and every American.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are lots of things that are wrong in our country. There are a number of things that are right in our country.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't disrespect yourself, the country, the people that served under that flag, and the history of our country
Mm-hmm.
by by purposely taking the knee. There are other ways of doing this. It's like my famous thing: if the policeman walks into church and say we have too many people, you know what Father Mark's going to do? He has a little sign in the back that says I'm a protester. you know, so
Raggedy
they won't get me.
cardboard. Uh,
I don't really
yeah.
have one of those, but yeah.
I'm just wondering if because that symbol that you just held up explicitly rides on the uh the substrate of a faithful populace.
Yes.
I believe it was it Jefferson? I can't remember. or William James, one of the founding fathers explicitly said all of the thing that we are making presupposes a faithful, believing populace. So I think that I almost wonder in this post nominalist, super postmodern ghost in the machine world that we're living in, can symbols like that even still hold up?
Well, that's
I'd
the
say
question.
like a weaker, because it's a weak symbol compared to the symbolism of the church, which is true depth. You know, well, I mean, ultimately, no, it won't hold up, right? Like eventually, that symbol that you held up will fall.
Oh, it will go. It will go away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it will go away, and and they'll, that's true. But for those people that serve under it, for those people that take the oath, which is my answer to a number of political questions, those in themselves are symbols. And those who serve our country take a very special oath to protect the Constitution of the United States of America.
Yeah.
Everybody that works for the government takes that.
Yeah.
And they represent each one of us. When you're in the military, a part of your uniform to have on you in a certain pocket is your ID card.
That's part of your uniform.
Part of your uniform. If you don't have that ID card in that particular pocket, you can be written up for that.
Why is that?
It's a symbol.
Yeah, I mean, because I've been interfacing with my great nephew and great niece, and I mean, I haven't been around teenagers in a while, and I feel so old, but like they really live in a completely disenchanted world. That's something that I am encountering with younger people, children, like the God family's children that are God family's children who are 5 and 9 and have heretofore been educated in the public system. The great nephew and niece here, like the kids are like, I don't like what you're talking about with the importance of the symbolism of your career. Like they would be blank on that because they're so hyper individualized. It's why I, not that they're trending on this path or anything, but it's why I brought up the condensed symbol of the transgendered person at the beginning, because that's everything directed back in everything. And we're running out of time, and I don't know if it warrants another show, but I was reading today's gospel reading on the old calendar, and it was, of course it was, yet another parable. And I found it, again, like visiting with my nephew's pastor and things, being literalists and these types of things. It's like everything almost that Jesus taught was in parables, which is symbols. And everything that he did was this weird, like if you read the Fathers at all or whatever, like, which I just thankfully get, via homilies, is all the books. Anyway, it's like everything about Jesus' ministry was symbolic.
Yes.
That's the locus, right? So maybe, can we squeeze a show out of that? Do you want to try to squeeze a show out of like parables and the symbolic meaning of like the Gospels next week? Because that
we could squeeze 12 shows out of that, but we can try and get it. We're going to try and get it into one show. So
we can get 4. It's fine. We got time.
Next Thursday is, of course, the new calendar, new style, Feast of the Nativity of our Lord.
That is
and
true.
God and Savior Jesus Christ, which is the longest very long name, but
that is a long. That's true.
But so we're going to have to skip next Thursday.
What will our loyal viewer do?
I don't know what that person's going to do. You know, it's
I'm sorry, loyal viewer. Well, we'll try to get it together on Friday if we can, but if not, well, the following week we'll be back.
Yeah, we'll see about Friday. Friday might be a possibility.
Yeah, we'll have to go offline and canoodle on our schedules. Well, cool. That was good. I think we got a little farther out of Machine World today, hopefully.
I hope so, because we still use symbols.
Yes.
We still do that.
Yeah.
Because we're human beings.
Yeah, you can't not.
Sometimes we use them the wrong way.
Often.
Yeah. But icons are different because they infuse our direction towards Christ.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Yep.
And it's not about the wood. It's not about the paint. It's not about the prayers that go with it. It's not about, it's about everything and Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
And I think that the loss of those is it's telling. Anyway, we are, let's see, what does the old flipper say? Oh, Father Mark, we ran 1 minute over.
I'm ashamed of myself.
Pretty good for us, actually.
Actually, it's really good for us.
All right. Well, thank you as always. And we will see you folks next week if we can. And if not, we'll be back the following week for sure. We'll talk about Christ, the parables, the symbols in the Gospels, and more escaping from Machine World. Until then, I still don't know how to do this virtually, but Catechumens Depart.